So when answering the question, how does faith inform my research, it's actually probably one of the most sort of rote answers you're going to get. And that is, being able to be at a school like Seattle Pacific University lets you be your whole self, right? Probably most people are going to answer something like that. But I think it is true, and it's worth saying, that as a STEM scientist, someone who really had done a lot of research before coming here, I was both a Christian and a scientist, but never really both at the same time. Like, my colleagues knew I was Christian, were totally fine with that, but it wasn't really informing or shaping how I both taught in the classroom and did research. And it took me a while once I got to SPU to really sort of start to make sense of what that actually means. And I think the conclusion I've come to is something along the lines of, there's actually something really important that we miss when we're not allowed to bring our whole selves into the classroom. And I'm not just talking about Christians here, I'm talking about people of all faith backgrounds, and even atheists. In science, we use something called the scientific method, which we've all probably heard of. Underneath the scientific method is something that we call methodological empiricism. It's this idea, right, that you can measure things and repeat experiments and come to repeatable conclusions. The ability to do this is really awesome. It gives us the technology, like the camera that is recording this video and the screen that you're watching it on. We don't get those without methodological empiricism. But when you only teach the scientific method and not really why the scientific method works and how you make meaning out of other things in life, you end up missing a big part of what it means to be human. There are maybe different forms of knowledge, and methodological empiricism is just one way to obtain knowledge. Other ways to obtain knowledge might be through experience, right? I can tell you all about a tree when you walk outside, but until you go outside and actually look at the tree, something is added in that experience. And so that's a way of making knowledge too, is through experiencing the world, through interacting with other people, through nature and things like this. And so there are different ways to obtain knowledge in this world. Science is really cool and really a good way to do it. But for me, Christianity is just as meaningful and perhaps even more foundational because it gives meaning to what I'm doing. And so at a place like Seattle Pacific, where you get this liberal arts education from a Christian perspective, we can talk with people in the classroom who may be atheist, who may be Muslim, who may be Christian, and sort of say, well, what does it mean to make meaning? And how does the knowledge that we gain from science interact with the knowledge that we gain from other experiences that we've had in our lives, which are just as valid, right? We don't say it's not valuable to look at a tree because I can explain to you what a tree is scientifically. There's both meaning to be made for both of those things and how they interact. And so being in the classroom at SPU has given me this ability to really say, like, I understand that this is how it works from the scientific perspective, but what does that mean in my own personal experience, in the experience of those in the classroom? And we can come together and really discuss meaning making from multiple perspectives. And so what it means to bring my faith into the classroom is this ability to sort of take a step back and say, what does all this mean for us as humans? What does it mean to be human, to make meaning from both the scientific perspective and from the faith perspective? And I think that's something that you don't get everywhere. And it's something that was definitely missing. Because when it's missing, people don't examine the assumptions they make. And then they start to think, well, science works pretty well. It must be the only type of knowledge that you can have. And so people go from this methodological empiricism to this idea that all knowledge is just scientific knowledge and everything else is meaningless. And I think some of the societal problems that we've had is through this unexamined way of thinking in our society. So we lose meaning in life if we don't examine other forms of knowledge that are just as important as scientific knowledge. In Socrates' trial of Athens for corrupting the youth through his philosophical debates, he quipped that the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think the same is true of unexamined scientific knowledge. It's not really worth anything until we understand how it affects us as people, whether this is going to be good for us or bad for us, and how we might interact with new technologies like AI and things like this to really make sense of what it means to be human and be careful not to forget that scientific knowledge isn't the only kind of knowledge out there.